The disappearance of Paul Aaron Triplett from Knott County, Kentucky. The last date of contact was January 7th, 2002. Now, this is written on the website Reddit, and it says, "My dad has been missing since 2002, and very little has been done with his case. Family members have suspected from the very beginning that he was murdered. They think they know the individual responsible." Now, just recently in 2023, some information was brought to the family's attention that they had not ever been told by the police. Now, the police had known about this for quite a while, but they had never told the family about this. Our family was never informed about a witness who came forward that same year. They confirmed the identity of a suspect, and this witness, along with some other witnesses, said that they witnessed an altercation between Paul Aaron Triplett and this suspect on the day that he was last seen. And they came forward and they talked to the police about this, and they even told the police where they believed that Aaron Triplett's body may be found because of rumor and because of talk. Despite the witnesses' testimony and the suspicious circumstances, police never followed through and they never went out to this property and investigated. They never informed the family that they had a suspect in mind and that they suspected foul play. We only found this information out when they got a copy of the case file in 2023. Now, the problem with this is the suspect, along with the witness, have both died since this took place. The family believes that no true justice will ever be given to Aaron Triplett, and all they want at this point is to find his remains and return them to a family grave. They say our father, Aaron Triplett, was a real person and that he should be, that his family should be able to get this closure. Now, the suspect owned, and it doesn't say where this was at. The suspect owned a large piece of land in rural Kentucky. And during a walk of the property in 2016, an investigator identified 4 wells. He asked the police to grant him, he asked the new homeowner, the landowners, to grant him permission to return to the property with canines to search. And they gave him the permission, but the police would never make it official. I guess if they had actually went out there and found remains, the police would then have gotten involved. But he never did go back out there and follow up with the dogs. A new investigator came on the scene in 2023, and he has since started looking into this and is doing his own investigations, trying to find out. Now, here's a little bit about Paul Aaron Triplett. Triplett was last seen in the vicinity of Alice Lloyd College in Pippa Passes, Kentucky, in January of 2002. He was with his girlfriend and he had dropped her off at Alice Lloyd College, and he was to return back to Wayland, Kentucky in Floyd County, where he lived, but he never made it back home. His truck was found in the parking garage of the Good Samaritan Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky. Aaron Triplett, he was a white male. He was age 20 at the time that he disappeared. He was 6'2" tall and weighed 150 pounds. He had brown hair and green eyes. He was last known to have been wearing a black leather jacket, a green thermal shirt, light blue jeans, and brown Timberland shoes. He had packed an overnight bag with some clothes in it, and he had this bag with him, but this bag was not found in the truck when his truck was found. He has a tattoo of a dragon on his right leg, and the tattoo of a bird on his back of his right shoulder. 22 years ago, Paul Aaron Triplett dropped off his girlfriend at Alice Lloyd College and disappeared without a trace. His vehicle showed up abandoned in the Good Samaritan parking garage in Lexington, Kentucky. And it doesn't, like I said earlier, it doesn't say how much time had passed. His sister says, "We just want to bring him home and lay him to rest. We know that he is gone." Authorities suspected foul play, and months after his disappearance, authorities suspected foul play. They had started getting some information from some people in the community about witnessing an altercation, but they never informed the family about this. I don't know if there was a reason why, if they suspected maybe that someone in the family or was friends with this suspect or knew this suspect and they were afraid that this person might get tipped off or something. Um, but for some reason, police decided to keep that information to themselves. And his sister just says, "Please come forward if you have any information. All we want to do is find his body and lay him to rest." If anyone has any information on Paul Aaron Triplett, they can contact Kentucky State Police at 606-435-6069, or you can contact Heather Triplett at hntriplett1@gmail.com. That's HNTRIPLETT1@gmail.com. This story is a carryover from the stories that I was doing recently out of West Virginia, missing persons. This is the story of Victor Shoemaker. He was born March 30th, 1989, and he went missing on May the 1st, 1994. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. He was 4 foot tall and weighed 40 pounds. He was from Kirby, West Virginia. He was last seen playing with some other children in the woods near Short Mountain. Victor walked away from the group and has not been seen since. He was wearing a pair of red shorts and a red t-shirt. Victor Dwight Shoemaker, also known as JR, and his family were attending a family reunion at his grandfather's home on May 1st, 1994. They lived on the outskirts of Short Mountain. That morning, JR and his two cousins, 8-year-old Lloyd and 9-year-old Tommy, were outside playing near the woods. According to the cousins, JR ran back to his grandfather's house, and it was around 8:30 in the morning. He said he was hungry, but as he was running away, they apparently lost sight of him. The grandfather said that he never returned back to the house. And after about an hour, when the little boy didn't come back to the house and the cousins said that he had ran off, everyone started to look for him. The area around this home was rugged. The weather was foggy that morning. It had been raining. And one theory is that JR may have become a victim to a careless hunter. That maybe he ran out into the woods, got lost, got turned away from the house, and a hunter might have accidentally shot him. I don't know if anyone was hunting in that area that morning or not, but this was ruled out when nobody discovered a body or any blood or any signs of any kind of, you know, that anyone had been in that area hunting to begin with. Side and some freshly disturbed dirt. But there was no evidence to say that JR had actually been there. In 1994, authorities announced they did not suspect foul play and that they believed JR had gotten turned around in the woods and got lost. They believe he died from exposure. Well, just like the little boy that I did the story on in Maine, they never found a body. They never found any signs of him. He was about 4 or 5 years of age as well. These children are not wandering great long distances away. They're going to become tired, they're going to become scared, and they're going to sit down. They're going to begin to cry. They may wander, but they're not going to wander so far away that search parties are not going to be able to find them. Authorities called in the FBI and they began to suspect foul play. JR's parents, Victor and Nettie, do not agree with the theory that their son simply got lost. They said that he was very familiar with the area, he knew how to get back to his grandfather's house, and that he would never go out into the woods alone. His parents and many others believe that JR was kidnapped. One incident that might indicate this was that a dog that they'd brought out to help search kept his nose in the air instead of on the ground. Now, this would indicate that if a dog is sniffing along the ground, he's picked up a scent and he's going to continue to follow that scent on the ground. But if he keeps his nose turned up in the air, it means that he's lost the scent. So it would indicate that the child was there where the dog stops and then is gone from that area. So it would mean that possibly someone picked him up and carried him away. They believe that JR was picked up and carried and put into a car that was waiting nearby on the roadway. JR's parents also became suspicious of the two cousins. They said that the two boys began to act strangely when they returned home. They thought, this being just two older boys, 8 and 9 is not older, but 5, 8, and 9, that the two older boys may have led JR away out into the woods playing a hide and seek type game and left him there. And when they couldn't find him, they got scared that they were going to get into trouble. So they started to kind of act sheepish and they started to kind of make up the story about he just said he was going to go back home because he was hungry and he wanted to go back and get something to eat. Both of Victor's parents took lie detector tests, and their parents, the two boys, Lloyd and Tommy's parents, stopped speaking to Victor's parents and they refused to talk to the media. The two boys went and took a lie detector test and they said that they did pass the lie detector test. In 1997, the FBI announced that a dark blue pickup truck was seen in the area on the morning that JR disappeared. They were unable to identify a driver. In 2014, it was announced that all investigative leads into JR's disappearance had been exhausted. This is from Morbidology. This was written in 2018. On May the 1st, 1994, Victor Dwight Shoemaker, age 5, disappeared while playing with his cousins near the woods on Short Mountain, Kirby, West Virginia. The family has believed everything from a tragic accident to an abduction to family involvement. The bedroom of Victor Dwight Shoemaker Jr. is frozen in time. Affectionately called JR by his family, he was only 5 years old when he vanished. It was a brisk spring morning in Kirby, West Virginia, and his family were attending a family reunion at his grandfather's home. This is a very rugged area, and it's a popular area for hunters. Once they arrived, JR and his two older cousins began to play in the area near the woods. They had a BB gun and they pretended to be hunting, said their grandfather. They just were out having fun like other little boys. And they would run around shooting the BB gun and pretending that they were killing deer. JR was enjoying himself so much in the area because he lived in an apartment in a town and he didn't often get to play outside in the woods and run around and have this kind of fun. So they were just having a good time. They were climbing trees, playing in the creek. Now, his parents claimed that he knew the area very well and that he would have come back to the home. This is what leads them to believe that there was something more going on here. Um, Victor Shoemaker Sr. and his wife Nettie allowed their son to play and have fun because they say they had tried for so many years to have a baby before she finally got pregnant with JR that they just really kind of doted on him and were kind of not overly protective of him, but just really let him do what he wanted, and they just enjoyed watching him get out and play. They say that morning he was wearing a red Bugs Bunny t-shirt and a pair of red shorts with a pair of white shoes. And according to the two older boys, they said that JR told them, "I'm going back to the house and have the grandfather fix him some breakfast because he said that he was hungry." Now, the grandfather says an hour or so had passed when the boys came to the house to tell JR to come on back out to play, and the grandfather says he never came here. He hasn't been back in the house. This is when everyone started to search for him. Search parties came in from West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and as far away as North Carolina. They trudged through the rugged terrain in southwest Hampshire County. It was foggy and rainy that morning, and the temperatures had dropped low that night. There was some pretty heavy brush in the area, and at some places it was hard to see more than 10 feet in front of you, said one of the volunteers. The search was strenuous. Once they got deeper out into the woods, they began to run into more like thick brush and ponds and oak trees. So it became more of an uphill kind of terrain. And this was another reason why I said earlier that these kids, they're going to get tired, they're hungry, they haven't had anything to eat, they're afraid, they're scared of the dark. Once it would get dark, they would be unable to see around them. And more than likely, they're going to find some place where they can sit down and stay there. And so the fact that these people searched and searched for miles, this is what leads a lot of people to believe that the little boy was abducted. Now, they brought in a helicopter that was equipped with infrared equipment, and they flew over the area, and divers plunged into nearby ponds, and they really put in a lot of effort to search for this child. But after 5 days, the search was called off. They found no traces of him in an area far enough away that they believed that a 5-year-old child could have made it on foot, and in the types of terrain that they had gone through. Not being able to find any traces of him, they called the search off. They said that this was a 1 in a million possibility, and that the road where they I guess a road that was nearby was seldom used. They didn't think a lot of people would have been out there or had reason to be out there. They believe that JR got lost and died from exposure. Despite claiming this, it should be noted that the FBI did come in to assist, and they did say they considered this to be an act of foul play. They believe JR was abducted and taken across state lines. They believe that someone took him off of that hill. Somebody had to have taken him off of that hill, said his mother. He knows those woods pretty well, and if he was out there, he would have. And she says, I knew those woods pretty well, and if he was out there, I would have found him. There's something phony going on here, she said. Now, as far as the search dog goes, it says the search dog led them to a field before abruptly stopping on the road, and this was the only road in or out of the area. The dog stops, it walks out across this field to the road and stops. And they believe that this is where it lost the scent of JR. This is what leads them to believe that he was picked up and put into a car. Now, it's possible that he wandered across that field, made it to the road, and someone came along, just like with the other little boy in Maine, and said, let me give you a ride back to your family, and instead ended up abducting the child. The father said that he was very suspicious of how the two cousins were acting when they came back to the house to say that JR was missing. Now, they said that JR told them, I'm going back to the grandfather's house to get some breakfast. But when they came back, instead of coming in saying, Where's JR? He said he was coming here to get breakfast. They come back and said, We can't find him. We don't know where he's at. So that was kind of the first suspicion that gave the father cause to wonder what was, you know. And he said that he believed that they were in fear of getting into trouble because they probably had led the little boy off in a game of hide and seek or something like that. But like I said earlier, they passed a lie detector test. Um, Someone in the area claimed that they saw a dark blue pickup truck in the area. They informed the FBI about this. Searches were conducted. They were never able to find a truck that matched. And no one was ever declared a suspect. There was a person of interest, and this person was asked if you were in that area, if you were driving a truck of that sort, please come forward and let us sort this out. And that was it. No one ever did come forward. All these years have passed, and there's never been any traces of JR. There have never been any suspects questioned, and there's never been anything more after that. His parents said that they would hold out hope that he would be recovered, that he would either be found alive somewhere as an adult, or someone someday may find his body if he did indeed wander away and die from exposure. And if you have any information about the disappearance of Victor Dwight Shoemaker, known as JR, you can contact the West Virginia State Police at 304-822-3561. This is another older case, and this is from 1959. Perdido Bay, Alabama. This is considered a non-family abduction. This child was 4 years old at the time of his disappearance, and his name was Daniel Barter. Daniel was a white male. He was born December the 12th, 1954, and he was last seen on May the 18th, 1959. He was last seen wearing only gray shorts. He was a white male with brown hair and brown eyes. Daniel was last seen playing near the banks of the Perdido Bay in Alabama between the hours of 9:30 and 10 a.m. He resided not too far away in Mobile, Alabama. At the time, he was camping with his parents, a cousin, and three siblings. The campsite was about an hour away from their home. Apparently, the little boy wandered away from the rest of his family while his parents were preparing to get the equipment and everything together to go fishing. They said that he was carrying a bottle of knee high soda at the time and had walked down to the waterway waiting for the rest of the family. His mother went to call for him and began searching for him, and after about 15 minutes, she couldn't locate him. The area where he disappeared from is swampy and infested with alligators and snakes. Authorities investigated the theory that the child had been attacked by an animal, and they killed two nearby alligators that they found and cut them open, searching for any signs that they had attacked the child, but they were not able to find anything. The pond was searched as well, the swamp area was searched. None of his body parts or anything was ever found, and they didn't even find the bottle of soda. They said this, if he had gone into the water, more than likely that bottle of soda would have been in the water. Dogs were brought in and searched the area, but they were never able to pick up any trace of the child. Um, His mother said that he did not like the water and that she did not believe that he would go as close to the water enough to fall in, that he was not that close to the water when he was last seen. He was simply walking around nearby the water as the family was getting ready to go fishing. The undergrowth bordering the campsite was thick. They said that Daniel was barefoot and wearing only a pair of shorts. His parents said they do not believe he would have gone into the brush. The search turned up no evidence, and investigators decided it was unlikely that Daniel had wandered into the woods. They looked into the possibility of abduction, but they never found any clues. The family was not wealthy, and they never received any kind of ransom notices or anything like that. A month before his disappearance, his mother says that she saw a mysterious vehicle parked in front of their house in Mobile, Alabama. She walked out to the car to see who this was. They lived in an area where there would been no reason for cars to be parked out on the street in front of their home, so she walks out there. She says the man picks up a newspaper and pretends to be reading the paper. She said before she actually made it to the car window, he started the car and drove away. Now, a few evenings after this, a neighbor of theirs said that he saw a man looking into the family's windows. He asked the family, "Did you have a visitor? Did you have someone at your home working?" They said no, there'd been no one at their home that they knew of. He says, "Well, I saw a man walking around looking inside of your windows." So they believed that someone had been watching the family, watching this child, had followed them out there, saw an opportunity to take the child, and took him. The neighbor also told the family that he had started to walk over to the house that day, but as he started walking toward the house, the man turned around and walked away, and he never saw him again. There were footprints found in the dirt outside of the family's windows, and after the child went missing, the police went back to their house, found these footprints, and they made casts of the footprints, and they took photographs. On the morning before Daniel disappeared, his mother drove him and one of his brothers to a nearby store. She went inside, and the boys stayed outside in the car. They told their mother that an unknown man drove up and parked next to them and sat staring at the boys and never did speak to them. Said he just sat in his car and stared at them through his windows. These incidents have led the Barters to suspect that Daniel was kidnapped by someone who had been stalking the family. His case was reopened years later, and many of the original detective files have been destroyed over the years. They didn't really keep evidence or files back at that time. Daniel was one of 7 children born to his parents, Paul and Maxine. In 2006, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released age progression photos of Daniel. In 2008, the FBI reopened the case after rumors started coming out about a conversation that was overheard about someone claiming to know what happened to Daniel, but they were never able to find anything concrete about that. Daniel's case is still considered an active missing person case. Anyone with any information should call 251-937-0202 or contact the FBI. So I wanted to add this story to the end of these last couple that I did. This is a story that had somewhat of a happy ending. You don't often hear about these when it comes to missing children or abducted children cases, but this is the story of Luis Albano, who was kidnapped from San Francisco when he was about 6 years old in 1951. And many, many years later, his niece, who was actually 63 years old at that time, did a genealogy DNA, put her DNA into one of these genealogy bases. Growing up throughout her life, she had always heard about the little boy in her family who had been abducted, and she decided to put her DNA into one of the databases, and she got a hit. She reached out to this person and told him that, the story about her having a uncle who had gone missing 70 years earlier, and he didn't contact her back. He didn't get in touch with her. But she felt enough about this that she went to the local police and she told them about the abduction that had taken place in San Francisco in 1951. And they looked into it, and they reached out to this man, and he agreed to provide a DNA sample. And once again, they got a match, and he came to California, and he gave DNA, and his sister gave her DNA, and it matched. And they were able to confirm that he was the child who had been abducted all those years earlier. On February the 21st, 1951, a woman lured a Puerto Rican boy named Luis Armando Albano, who was 6 years old, from a West Oakland park in California. The little boy had been there playing with his older brother when this woman came up to him, speaking to him in Spanish, and promised to buy him some candy. She lured the little boy away from the park, and instead of taking him to buy candy, she ends up putting him on an airplane and flying him to the East Coast. Now, he was taken in by another couple, and he was raised as their son, and he spent his entire life, the next 70 years of his life, being raised as this couple's son. Now, I don't know if he knew growing up that he was, that if they told him, we adopted you, or if they said that he was their son. I think it's possible, since the woman was a Spanish-speaking woman, that she may have passed the child off as her son and said that she couldn't raise him. And I believe she got paid for this. And this could have been a child abduction ring. But anyway, for more than 70 years, he remained missing. His family always searched for him and had photographs of him hanging in all of their homes. It was Albano's niece, who lived in Oakland, with the assistance from the police, the FBI, and the Justice Department, searched for her uncle. They were able to locate him living on the East Coast. Louise was a father and grandfather, a retired firefighter, and a veteran of the Marine Corps. He served in Vietnam. His niece, Alida Alquin, found him and reunited him with his family in California. In an interview with the news group, his niece said, "He hugged me and thanked me for finding him. He gave me a kiss on the cheek." Oakland Tribune articles from the time reported that police and soldiers from the local Army base, the Coast Guard, and other city employees joined a massive search for the missing boy. San Francisco Bay and other waterways were also searched, according to these articles. His brother Roger was interrogated several times, but he stood by his story about a woman with a bandana around her head taking his brother. On a visit to the Oakland Public Library, she looked at microfilm of the Tribune articles about the missing little boy. There was a picture of her uncle Louise and Roger. She was convinced that this was the man that she had matched with through the DNA. She went to the Oakland Police Department that same day and told them about making this match and believing that this man may be her missing uncle. Investigators eventually agreed that this new lead was substantial and a new missing persons case was reopened. Oakland police last said that the missing person case was closed, but they reopened it with the help of the FBI. Louise was located on the East Coast, and he provided a DNA sample, as did her mother, who was his sister. On June 20th, investigators went to her mother's home and told them that this was indeed her brother. "We all started crying," she said. "I grabbed Mom's hands and we said we found him." On June 24th, with the assistance of the FBI, Louise came to Oakland with members of the family, and they all met and hugged and got reacquainted. The next day, they all went to the brother's home, Roger, the brother that had been with him. They grabbed each other and had a really long hug and sat down and talked. They began to discuss the day of the kidnapping, and they went on to talk about their lives since then, their time spent in the military, and so forth. "I was always determined to find him, and who knows, it could help other families the same way." So this man was reunited with his family after 70 years. Now, Louise, his mother, never gave up searching for him. She always believed her other son, Roger. She believed the story that he told about the woman who came over to them and promised to buy Louise some candy if he would go with her. She tried to keep the case going. She would periodically contact the police, but she passed away in 2005, and she never knew whatever became of her son. But Louise was reunited with his living relatives, and Roger, whose story had been questioned many times, when he was 10 years old when this took place, and he says that he followed the woman and Louise for a little ways, but he couldn't keep up with them. And when he saw that he wasn't going to be able to keep up with her, he ran home to tell his family what had happened. And the police questioned his story. They thought he was making this up. They thought he maybe had lost the child and was afraid he was going to get in trouble with his family, or that maybe he had done something to the child. But they did search for Louise in the area. They searched San Francisco, and they searched around the bay, and they just couldn't come up with anything. But Roger always maintained the story about the woman who was wearing a bandana who came up to them in the park. He never wavered from that story. Now, the part that I asked the question about and I couldn't find the answer to this was, did the parents who raised him know his background? Or did they believe that they were just adopting a child that maybe this woman passed off as her own? Maybe they paid for the, the child. But I would assume that they probably also have passed away. So I don't know if the FBI and the police are searching, investigating their part in that, or trying to get to the bottom of who this woman was, or if they'll ever be able. But I wondered if Luis had no memory of his siblings and his parents. The family had lived in Puerto Rico up until Luis was 5 years old and had only been in the United States for about a year when he was taken. And he was one of 6 children. And I just wondered if he had no memory of that, no memory of living in Puerto Rico, no memory of coming to the United States, no memory of his mother or brothers and sisters in California. And maybe they had convinced him that that never happened. He says he grew up believing the people who raised him were his real parents, which is, I suppose a 5-year-old can lose that memory of that early childhood. I don't know if his name had been, I'm assuming that his name had been changed. They probably didn't even know his real name, unless this woman knew his family. But he had to have grown up with a name, a social security number. He worked as a firefighter for many years, and he joined the military. He served in the military. He was married and had children and grandchildren. Now, he went back to California again in 2024, and he spent about 3 weeks visiting with his biological family, getting to know them a little better. And his brother Roger, that had been with him at the time, had always lived with this guilt and this feeling that nobody believed him and having been questioned, and he always grew up with this just hanging over him, never knowing what had happened to Louise. But he died a few months after Louise had come to visit him in California, and his family says they believe he was finally at peace. He finally knew that everyone believed his story and that they knew that he hadn't been making this up, and that Louise hadn't been murdered or harmed, that he had been taken and given to a family and grew up in a good life, and he'd had a good long life. And so they believed that Roger was at peace knowing that. And so that was just a little bit of a happy story to share. While there are still questionable parts about it, about who these people were that adopted him, and but in the long run, it all worked out. He was able to meet his biological family, find out who he was, and they were able to get some closure knowing that he was alive. And thanks for watching.